Hi, I'm Jock.
Hey, I'm Ray.
You're listening to The Pig Wrestlers, a podcast where Ray and I are reviewing this book, Never Wrestle With A Pig by Mark McCormack. So here are essentially some tips he has for using time more efficiently. And it's great because I guess some of them are a little bit, not common sense, but are clearly not common sense because not everyone does them. But I personally like, 'cause this is what I used to say to my own team, which was, end your day on time. And so, around about 6 o'clock, I literally walk through the office and walk around days like, go home, you're not welcome. I'm going to pull the plugs out of your computers. Because genuinely, if they hadn't got whatever they're going to get done by this point in the day, they're tired, they've had a long day, they might as well go home, have a proper rest and not just put 2 hours of ineffective time on the task, And so
it means that tomorrow they know the day ends at 6 and they need to then finish what they're doing. And that brings the right level of urgency to the tasks.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things he says later on, where he talks about reversing Parkinson's law, where Parkinson's law is kind of a task will fill the time you give it. It says reversing that, where in effect time boxing something means that you'll still get a result at the end of it. But by time boxing, you can minimize the amount of time it takes. And I think time boxing is a neat way to control the delivery of something, bearing in mind that you do potentially lose a bit of fidelity in the thing that you're creating if you do shorten it too much. But as you say, compressing it to the point where you've cut away the slack, but you haven't necessarily reduced the fidelity of the thing. Brilliant. Reducing it still further so that you're chucking something half-baked out the door is slightly different.
Well, this is why I have those 40-minute boxes, right? I know that this thing needs to get done. I'm not going to have the whole afternoon to do it.
So good enough, doing it good enough, but to completion within those 40 minutes is the goal.
Most things don't need to be done to, 110%.
Yeah.
But they need to be done. They do need to be finished. They need to be handed over to the next personal process.
Yep.
And without being done, everything slows down.
I mean, he gives the example of, how the last 10% of something takes you almost as long again to achieve that level. And and other people have said, don't let perfect be the enemy of good.
The first tip in this chapter is probably the one I like the most. And there's a reason why.
Go on.
So the tip is steal an early hour.
Yeah.
And I've always been a fan of sports. And this is the reason why I'm reading this book. And I grew up watching wrestling. And there's this famous line from an early, I think it was WrestleMania, where the announcer with the gruff voice goes, "You got to get up really early in the morning to beat the Macho Man Randy Savage." And it just instilled that, the day does end, but actually if you can get a bit more time early, you've got an advantage.
I just like the idea, particularly with, wrestling and Randy Savage. It just reminds me, or it just the sort of mental image that comes to mind is like some dude is like in his leotard in the ring, like, and it's empty. The whole arena is empty. He's just wandering around the ring, just going, "Oh, not here yet, are they?" It's like, okay, you can get up an hour early, but I don't think that's what they meant.
No, I think they meant get out and train. For the lover of any Rocky film, get the training montage in your ears.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's a good. I personally can't deal with that first rule on the basis that I really, really like sleeping in, and the concept of sacrificing an hour of my precious sleep to go and do some work is just anathema to me. It's like, no, I value sleep over everything else. I just can't get up early for that.
But there can. I think that's a big part of it, though, right? You know, if you go back to the military, right, you get up early. You get up early and you do your chores and you work out, and it sets up the day for all the proper work.
I mean, I totally get that. I'm just not a morning person, never have been. I will quite happily, get all the work out of the day done, and then I will quite happily work from 10 o'clock through till God knows in the morning if you let me. That's fine. I actually, that sense I think he's talking about, where there's no one in the office, it's quiet, the phones aren't ringing, you could have a nice cup of tea or coffee, and just enjoy it at your desk and just get something done in peace and quiet. I get that, but that for me is like the middle of the night having gone through from the evening. So my day goes around that way. That's just the way that I do it. In the morning, it's frankly, if I get up too suddenly from bed, I just feel ill all morning.
I think it's something about getting up early rather than staying up late working, and I think it's that whole healthiness of it.
Yeah, it's funny. I genuinely think though that different people are wired up differently. I don't find it as much of a problem to work late, but I will feel terrible if I try and get up too early. Whereas my wife is completely the opposite, and I think she learned fairly early on in the relationship that if she got up really early in the morning and started trilling away whilst I'm trying to sleep, she'll get something thrown at her. I like the fact that sort of closing your door, implies that you've got an office for the door. So this is his next tip about getting stuff done. I think to translate that into kind of 2021 terms, I think this is the equivalent of sticking your AirPods in.
Well, actually, even better, right? Saying no to that. Can we have a Zoom now?
Oh yeah, I mean,
I want to have a Zoom right now. Thank you very much. You got it covered. I trust you.
So, I mean, in terms of kind of controlling your time and, reducing distractions and stuff like, so, I unplugged my telephone at my desk. So when I worked at Experian, there came a point where I was just so busy and just couldn't get anything done. I would literally just unplug the phone, but I'd do it in such a way that no one noticed. Cause I knew it'd go to voicemail, and frankly, anything that important would somebody come into the desk anyway. Second thing I'd do was, they gave me a BlackBerry when BlackBerries were still a thing. And essentially my boss kept shouting at me. Big said, "Have you got your BlackBerry?" And I said, "No, I turned it off and stuck it in my desk because I don't want to use it." Because I don't want to be contacted 24 hours a day. If I wanted to be contacted 24 hours a day, I'd VPN in on the email. Just like I don't want to be contacted that often.
When I worked in investment banking, you felt it. That, you saw it in all the meetings, right? People are in meetings, but responding to emails on the BlackBerry, and short, terse responses.
Yeah, so they're neither in the meeting nor doing any justice, putting no thought into the responses.
Yeah, BlackBerry culture, not good.
Yeah. So, just removing all those distractions, turning all the stuff off, phone on silent, no notifications, all that jazz. If needs be, I'll just go and work somewhere else. I just evacuate my desk. So if people come looking for me, they can't find me either. But it's just that thing, because the thing that used to annoy me the most was people come up to me and say, "Oh, I've got, can I ask a quick question?" And I go, "Well, the question will be quick." The answer won't be. It rarely is. and it doesn't matter because you've just interrupted me.
Maybe that's a new chapter. Just because the question is quick doesn't mean the answer will be.
Oh God, it never is. It never is.
And I think with the whole remote working thing that we're going through, Slack has a lot to answer for, because it just demands your time, like it did with BlackBerries, right? Someone messages you, there's that. It's just pulling at you. Answer now. And
it's that endorphin thing you get from the little endorphin hit you get, which makes it addictive, less like answering emails, just like getting notifications, just getting likes on Twitter or blah, blah, blah. It's just the same thing over and over. All of those things are just eating into your productivity and eating into your concentration.
So, got to find ways to close the door.
Yes. I think the next tip, eliminate unnecessary travel. Yep, done that.
Yeah, well.
I think we all have.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, though, and it's really interesting to just observe how human beings work, right? So, we shut down, we're in lockdown, yet the curve is still on the upward trend. There's more cases, there's more deaths, and it's because the message hasn't got to everybody in the same realization. So some people get the message early, and so for me it was Matt Robinson, who runs Nested. So back in March, he was like, why haven't you sent your whole team home yet? And this was like a week and a half before the UK went into lockdown.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, you need to go home now, right? This thing is real. You need to go home. And that was my realization. Somebody I trusted and respected saying, this thing is real. You need to get home, because the government wasn't getting it right. Boris Johnson was on TV saying, you just need to wash your hands. And then immediately, a few weeks later, gets COVID-19 and is in critical condition.
Yeah. Was that just after he was shaking hands with all the COVID patients in the hospital, like a lunatic? Who could possibly have foreseen?
He clearly took longer than others to have the realization that this thing is not going to be controlled by government measures. And we were talking about this last week, about the vaccine being hailed as a magic bullet. It is not. It's a part of a strategy that needs other things going on. And I think the message just takes time to get out there. I know so many people who've caught COVID recently. And have you not been in lockdown? Without asking it, because obviously they've just had it. I don't want to put boot in, but the message hasn't got out there as crisply as it could.
It's difficult. I mean, it's so I can see kind of how the complacency creeps in, and how I guess, well, to an extent, I think the government's kind of basically undermined itself by not being consistent and following through on their own messages and being absolutely rigorous to make sure that all of the people in the public eye, all of the government officials, are seen to be also following the rules. And if not, they get the book thrown at them, kind of thing. Because otherwise, it's like, well, if they're not doing it, why should we? And I'm just still not scared witless about it, but it's just like, yeah, this is a serious thing, and I really don't want to catch it, and I really want to basically hold out until such a point where we can relax a bit. But now is not the time to be relaxing, But
that's not clear to everybody.
I know. But at the same time, I think there's also, for me at least, there was certainly a point where that had gone too far, and I was actually just panicking, in my own head,
People are desperate to get out. There are very few people who are comfortable in the current situation, and so they're looking to hope and going, oh, it's not going to be that bad. We can.
Yeah, it's that kind of thing. I'll just chance it. I'll be all right this time. And the problem is, I think, is when you've got people who are kind of chancing it, sometimes they are lucky and sometimes they're not. And the problem is that if you only see the survivorship bias, in not to be too on the nose about it, it's like if you only ever see the ones that didn't have a bad consequence, and you think, oh, it's gonna be fine, it was fine for all these other people, but what you're not seeing is all the other people who did catch it and didn't have a necessarily good outcome. But yeah, it's kind of that. It's the same kind of fallacy with startups. You everyone wants to be the next unicorn, everyone wants to be the next PayPal or the next Twitter or next whatever, because they're kind of looking at something and saying, oh yeah, it worked for them, we just do the right things. And what they don't see is the thousands of other contenders that were all trying to do the same thing and failed. And it just happened that this one organization happened to have the right combination of things at the right time.
Right, the timing is the important thing.
Yeah, exactly. So what next? Find a surrogate.
This is an incredible point, because it goes beyond delegating.
Yeah. it's not delegating because it's someone who can do or pick up the things that you aren't going to be able to deal with whilst you're away or doing something else or whatever else, for a temporary period, not on a permanent basis, but someone who is effectively at the same level as you, not just in terms of capability, but also arguably in terms of kind of clout, in terms of, but having someone that you can trust to be both competent and capable to get the things done, whilst also dealing with all the other stuff that they're dealing with. Bearing in mind no one's exactly sitting around twiddling their thumbs waiting for stuff to happen usually. I think
this is the point around co-founders.
Yeah.
I think a lot of co-founder relationships are wrong because, the junior co-founders aren't really surrogates. They're not being treated as surrogates. They're not being given the and they're not stepping up either to be able to, fulfill that co-founder promise. And I think a lot of it goes down to investors, right? Investors who are overly influential on the startup ecosystem, saying, "Oh, you must have a co-founder," and then not filling the nuances of actually this is a human being that needs to be able to, walk in step with you.
It is. Was it somebody described having a co-founder as essentially being like a work marriage?
Yeah.
You need to be sufficiently in tune and in sync with each other, but not necessarily, of the same mind. In fact, arguably a bit of healthy disagreement and challenging each other's mad ideas occasionally is probably a good thing. But at the end of the day, knowing that whatever happens, if one needs to cover for the other, they'll just do it without even batting an eyelid, just without question, is, I think, the rare thing. I think if you can't trust your co-founder in a startup to be able to do that with you and for you when you need them to, and vice versa, then that's a tricky relationship to build a business on.
Well, I mean, it's one of the biggest reasons for startups failing, right? It's co-founders not working out. Whether it's an actual fallout or there wasn't the chemistry there.
Because I think, would you say, because you've got far more experience in getting funding than I've ever done, would you say that when I've often heard it said that investors invest in the team, not necessarily in or secondarily in the product and the idea, but first and foremost it's the people, starting with the co-founders and then with the people they have around them that they're actually investing in. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I'd say they should be investing in timing first, because that's the biggest factor. And then the next factor is the team. And they'll overly weight the support team because they don't like the risk of potentially somebody not being able to bring that support team in, not being able to inspire that team to come along. And it's a key signal for a lot of investors of who you've got around you, whether it's team, co-founders, advisors, customers. The key signals are social signals.
Because I think when it comes down to certainly the assessment of whether the technology is fit for purpose. Well, first of all, at the point of getting investment, whatever technology exists will probably be replaced with something that actually is going to do the job, and the concept might tweak and alter based on actually figuring out what it is they're trying to do. So, which then kind of leaves the timing, which is, I mean, it's super difficult. I mean, would you? Well, clearly only a relatively small number of people did, but would you have invested in Tesla right at the beginning? 16 odd years ago or whatever it was, where they were setting out their vision for electric vehicles and essentially playing it in such a way that just about now, when the market's ready for it and when the consumers are ready for it and when the industry is making, and the governments are making changes to make this more acceptable, that they're in the position they need to be at that point. I mean, that's timing, but how do you throw darts at a dartboard 15 years down the line?
I think you just got to play the game, right? You've got to be in the game to be able to have the conviction to make that investment. You can take a view on the macro, and read Warren Buffett's letters, read the research that's put out there about what are the future trends that we're on the cusp of, from artificial intelligence to battery technology to what's the what we're doing with space now, right? It's been such a long time since we've progressed with space, but what's happened in the last few years, led by the likes of European Space Agency, Inmarsat, Elon Musk, there's a lot going on in space.
Oh yeah, it's a hell of a lot.
Already booming, but people aren't on it yet. We're going to put a lot of stuff up there.
There already is. Yeah, there already is. But yeah, it's just that finding that timing, and I guess again going back to survivorship bias. Of course, we only see the ones that were in the right place at the right time because they're the ones that kind of managed to make it big. The problem is you don't see the ones that were either you might see the ones that were too early and the market wasn't ready for them and they kind of fizzled out beforehand. And you certainly see the ones who were too late to market and just kind of also rans or follow-on copycats.
The cultural and social stuff really matters. So here in Europe, if you look at people that have wealth, like family offices and stuff, their primary purpose is to preserve their wealth. Whereas if you look in North America, their primary purpose is to grow their wealth. And that nuanced change in attitude, it tells the difference. Right? There's a reason why North American and Chinese wealth is growing faster than European wealth, is because they're looking to the future. And so they're setting themselves up on a platform that can get that timing right. And I think we're lucky now in London, at least, that you've got a lot more entrepreneurs that have had some success and are now putting that back into the conviction stakes, right? Saying, yeah, actually, I do think this is going to be the future. Here's some money. And there's more money sitting in venture funds than has ever been sat in venture funds, and so it's inevitable we'll get more of the timing right.
It certainly seems that I'll be interested to see how many new technologies and sort of leaps forward occur in the years following this period of lockdown and in effect forced constraint that in theory should lead to more creativity.
Yeah, but not only forced constraint, but like an abundance of capital too. Like the industry term is dry powder. They're sitting on so much dry powder. It's incredible, right?
Yeah. What do you think? What do you think? What do you think the next big thing is going to be then?
Honestly, Amazon and Tesla and Apple. I just look back for the last 10 years and think, if you were to attribute the things that have been moving the fastest, Google, Amazon, Tesla, they've been moving us, Apple, moving us forward far faster than any startup has. If you just look at Apple Pay, it is the most magical experience. Didn't come from a startup, it came from freaking Apple. And you look at Tesla and the myriad of innovations going into, not even today's cars, but the cars that you can buy today and can do more tomorrow because, over-the-air updates. They're really nailing that kind of stuff. And Amazon, if you were to pitch any one of the innovations that Amazon had brought in the last 10 years, that'd be a huge company. AWS, Prime, a lot of the
Warehouse
stuff
technology.
I've ordered over Amazon over the last few weeks, same day delivery.
Yeah.
I mean, it's absurd.
Yeah, the logistical stuff is super impressive.
The stuff they do with robotics and software is just out of this world.
I think in the next 10 years, the ubiquity of actual self-driving autonomous vehicles, like real ones as opposed to kind of not quite there yet, I think that will come to a point, it will become commonplace. But then the transformation about anything that requires transport will be, it's going to be completely different, because suddenly you have to ask the question, why would you put a human being inside the vehicle to drive it when, yeah. And then the thing is you've got the technologies being used obviously on the road in complicated scenarios. Why not more autonomous trains? Why not more autonomous,
Look, we've had the
container ferries.
The DLR's been driving itself for decades.
Yeah, sure, but why not? Why is that not approach? I mean, I think the Victoria line is automated. Is that right?
All of them have a bunch of the software and hardware to do it.
Yeah.
But there's union considerations.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's fair enough. But
and the unions will tell you that what happens if the train breaks down. There's all these safety procedures.
And I totally get that, and I don't want to, suddenly say that you don't need to have people when something goes wrong. But at the same time, I think looking at that kind of question of, well, hang on, why do you have, lorry drivers falling asleep because they've been, doing more hours than maybe they should have been on their tachometer kind of thing. It's that kind of idea. It's like, well, when it's a consideration of, it's not a cost consideration, it's even a safety consideration. Yeah. It is just, when it gets to that stage, then I think it becomes a much different proposition, because then suddenly you've got far more predictability over things than with slightly inconsistent, slightly fallible human beings in doing stuff.
You hit the nail on the head. The next iPhone shift in the world is going to be autonomous vehicles, and it'll change everything. Like, can you imagine when autonomous vehicles are normal?
Yeah, I can, and it's worrying.
Trying to get insurance for you to drive your own car.
I know. I ride motorbikes, right? And I'm going to be. It's like in every kind of dystopian film, or every film like iRobot or anything like that, where they've got ubiquitous autonomous vehicles. It's always the rebel protagonist who's got a motorbike. Right, and then you go, I can't believe you ride one of the things. Do you know how many people, this thing explode? It's like, yes, and that's precisely why I ride them, kind of thing. But it's, yeah. But you're right, they would
not going to be able to get insured.
You're not going to be allowed to drive on the roads. Well, if you think about it, as soon as you've got a motorway, which is predominantly autonomous vehicles, you're not going to be able to drive and react safely enough to drive within the herd of autonomous vehicles.
It's going to change everything. It's going to change insurance. It's going to change speed limits. It's going to change parking.
It's going to be different. It's going to be complete. I sort of joke because I envisage a time when, my kids are grown up, and it's like, Dad, can we borrow the car? I said, yeah, but you're only allowed to go to this place. You stop reprogramming the car to take you down the pub, right? Honestly. And like the car's going, it wasn't me. I didn't. Look, you stay out of this. You're biased.
Well, look, it'll change the world of work. If you can trust that your kids are going to get to school safely, then parents don't need to be the schleps that get into work later and have to leave earlier. Like,
I don't know. I don't know about that.
The kids going around for 2 hours in a sort of after-school minivan.
Yeah, but I see. My kids have been able to successfully get my television to do things and put it into modes that I didn't know existed. Right? Sure. I'm not letting them loose in an autonomous vehicle because God knows where. There's like, Dad, we're in Bristol. What the hell are you doing in Bristol?
You know, when I what you're saying is absolutely going to happen, because you see it, right? When I first got a car and I was 17, what else are you supposed to do? Well, we went from London to Brighton just to get donuts on the pier and back.
Because you got freedom.
You can drive.
Yeah. Yeah, but at the same time, it's I don't know. It's going to be that for me is going to be the big thing. But then also just applying that kind of autonomy and that kind of ability to transport something from A to B to all the other modes of transport as well. I'd love to never hear the phrase pilot error ever again. Yeah.
Right. It really will become something that close to disappears.
You're listening to the Pig Wrestlers podcast. We're meant to be reviewing the book Never Wrestle With A Pig by Mark McCormack, but we don't always get around to it.